In January of 1984, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China issued its report into the Guangxi Massacre. In the report, it estimated that somewhere between 100,000 to 150,000 had been killed, 89,700 of which were known people. Addresses and names could be verified. 20,000 known people were missing, presumed dead. 30,000 couldn't be identified. And most disturbingly of all, at least 421 had been cannibalised. This was the Cultural Revolution. In May of 1966, Mao Zedong had launched the Cultural Revolution. Starting from March of the following year, two factions gradually formed among troops and civilians in Guangxi. So, one faction supported the chairman of Guangxi, the communist leader, and they wanted him to direct a revolution. The other faction opposed this revolution, and this led to violent struggles, clashes between the two, and it led to massacres in the rural regions of Guangxi. Now, it's not clear if the higher-ups in Beijing actually knew about this, but at the time, the Cultural Revolution had got completely out of control. There were massacres in other parts of China as well. Guangdong, the neighbouring province, there was another massive death toll there. But what happened in Guangxi was quite disturbing. It went on for about 10 years, and it would involve people seizing other people, not necessarily their enemies, although sometimes they were, but they would capture them and behead them, or they would beat them alive. They'd bury them alive, they'd stone them, they'd drown them, they'd boil them, they'd slaughter groups of them, disembowel them, they'd take out organs and cut them up. And at one point, one poor fellow was blown up with dynamite for fun. So, another one, a geography instructor, was beaten to death by students, and her body was carried out to the river where, you don't even want to know, they did something to her, they mutilated her. And then they ate her organs, they cooked her and ate her organs. So you think the Cultural Revolution was just some cute little thing where they just went around with little books and shouted. They ate people. Sometimes they might not necessarily be dead. One poor guy, a peasant, who was a little bit overweight, called him fat, he was cycling by a village, and they seized him and ate him. Obviously they killed him first. Well, I'm assuming that, I hope so. But they killed this poor guy on a little bicycle, and he was just from the next village over. They killed him and ate him, and then they cut him up and gave portions to people in the village. Now, they say 20,000 were missing, and only 421 were eaten. What happened to those 20,000 people? it sounds very disturbingly possible that many of those 20,000 missing were actually cannibalized, which would probably be one of the largest cases of cannibalism in a non-famine time in all of history. It seems that this cannibalism wasn't because they were hungry, because the famine was like 15 years before at this point. They did this because they wanted to do it. And I'm not really sure why anyone would want to do that, even to your enemies. But this is what the Cultural Revolution brought the country to. In 2006, a Chinese academic at the University of California said that the Guangxi Massacre was the most serious massacre during the Cultural Revolution. And he stated that amongst the 65 accessible official county documents of Guangxi, 43 counties reported massacres, with 15 of them recording death tolls of over 1,000, whilst the average death toll was over 500. Another academic pointed out there were many differences between official death tolls and actual death tolls. In one county, it said that only 8 people died, but in the classified documents it was over 3,000. And then another county showed 37 victims, compared to almost 4,000 victims in its classified documents. How many of these were cannibalized? And what the hell was going on in the minds of those people down in Guangxi? According to Zheng Yi, a Chinese academic, human cannibalism occurred during the Cultural Revolution in Guangxi. So he did a lot of research on this topic in the 80s and smuggled copies of official documents out to the United States. In it indicates at least 137 people, perhaps hundreds more, were eaten by others, and thousands of people participated in the cannibalism. Documents also record a variety of forms of cannibalism, including eating people as an after-dinner snack, slicing off the meat in big parties, dividing up the flesh so each person could take a chunk home, barbecuing or roasting livers, etc. So, a member of the public security who joined the investigation groups wrote that in 1968, 38 people in Wushuan County were eaten, and 113 officials of the county participated in eating human flesh, hearts and livers. A peasant from Guangxi County, who happened to pass by Wuxian, and this is the one I was telling you about earlier, was caught and killed by local militia because he was fat. His heart and liver were taken out while his flesh was distributed to 20 people. A female militia leader ate 6 human livers in total and cut the genitals off 5 men and soaked them in alcohol, which she would drink later, claiming that these organs were beneficial to her health. The behavior of eating human flesh, hearts and livers occurred in many counties of Guangxi, including Wuxian, Wuming, Shaanxi, Guigang, Qingzhou, Guiping and Lingyuan. After the Revolutionary Committee was established in Shaanxi County, a killing conference was held at Pingshan Square, during which more than 10 officials and civilians were beaten to death. After the conference, a committee member, Li Hao, removed the hearts and livers from the corpses, sautéing them and preparing them as dishes for other representatives who attended the conference. Throughout 1967 and 1968, there were factions in the countryside that started not just eliminating each other physically, but literally in a couple of small towns they start ritualistically eating each other. In other words, it's not enough to eliminate your class enemy, you have to eat his heart. So there are very well documented cases of ritual cannibalism. There was a hierarchy in the consumption of class enemies. Leaders feasted on the heart and liver, mixed with pork, whilst ordinary villagers were allowed only to peck at the victim's arms and thighs. After the Cultural Revolution, people who were involved in the massacre or the cannibalism received minor punishments. In Wushan County, where at least 38 people were eaten, and I would imagine many more, 15 participants were prosecuted, receiving up to 14 years in prison, while 91 members of the Chinese Communist Party were expelled, and 39 non-party officials were either demoted or had a salary cut. Although the cannibalism was sponsored by local offices of the Communist Party, no direct evidence suggests that anyone in the National Party endorsed cannibalism or even knew of it. However, this happened not just in Guangxi, it happened all over China during this time. People were being brutalized in a way that is almost unimaginable. Like burying someone alive. Imagine that, boiling them alive, ripping them open and eating them. Like this is unbelievable barbarity. And this was whipped up by the hatred that was encouraged by Mao and his group. The Cultural Revolution was a devolution. It was a jump into the barbaric past. It was a shedding of all civilized behavior. Child denouncing parent, students condemning teachers, people being killed and eaten. This is the product and the end result of communism. I'm not going to say that whether you would like that video or not, but come back tomorrow for more if you're interested in history. Like, subscribe, and comment.